I decided a little bit of consternation was in order for this evening with This Week in Woke. We're going to do a couple of things that may feel initially like they are unrelated, but they're related in a couple of really important ways. Some of you may have caught wind of this a couple of days ago. Whoopi Goldberg, one of the greatest public intellectuals alive today, has given us brand new insight into the Holocaust on that, show, The View. This is just an excerpt from one of the news stories about it. The Liberal View co-host Whoopi Goldberg faced swift backlash for arguing on Monday's show that the Holocaust, quote, isn't about race, stunning her colleagues at the table. And it did stun her colleagues. It isn't about race. The Holocaust, she says, is not about race. Now, we've got two things going on. Number one is, what? You might say, what in the world? The other one is, how do we get to that point when someone in that public of a venue can just say that? Now, she got backlash and all that good stuff, but she went on later to say, but these are two white groups of people. And in that context, she said these are two white groups of people killing each other or going after each other. So to her mind, the Nazis trying to exterminate the Jews wasn't about race. I mean, forget what Hitler literally wrote about why he did this. To her woke mind, it wasn't about race. Now, she got pummeled by the ADF, the ADL. She got pummeled by all kinds of groups. So she comes back and she, reads this apology. Apology's been written for her. She does her X, Y, and Z. But which one of these 2 days does she believe? Which she said here. That's right. One of these two is a lie. One of these two is not like the other, right? The old Sesame Street song. I have my opinion about which it is, but nonetheless, this is a big deal because this is not a slip of a tongue. She is a disciple of the woke universe. So everything that comes through critical theory, critical race theory, she's been a hardcore supporter of Black Lives Matter from the very beginning. So she is a public disciple of this point of view. Now, people who are sort of on the forefront of this point of view, and especially Christian progressives who are into this point of view, they will tell you, people like Whoopi, they don't represent us. We just believe that this is about power dynamics and analyzing relationships and so forth. But then what they do when they write their books and their articles and they give their speeches and they disciple people, this is what they tell them, okay? This is how we get to this point where the Holocaust is not about race. It's about white people killing each other. Here's how we get there. So the whole critical theory, wokeness point of view, and who counts as white. Who counts as white? What does this mean? So whiteness, this brand new word that's become a really big deal in our culture recently. Whiteness is not first about color of skin. I mean, in one sense it is. But remember, this ideology is about power struggles, and they begin with the assumption, they begin with the idea that white males are at the top of the power pyramid, and they are the oppressors and everyone else is oppressed. Okay, that's white males, white European males. So in Whoopi's mind, everybody who has white skin and is roughly European or lives in America is at the top of the oppressor class. And by the way, this point of view that she expressed is not only anti-Semitic, it is the common anti-Semitism in our culture today, is eliminating Jews as a group of people and lumping them into white people. It's about the structures of power and patriarchy. So white males are automatically in. White males, we've talked about this, automatically evil, always bad, inherently racist. There's nothing you can do about that. If you're a white female, are you inherently racist? Well, it depends on who you vote for. That's no joke. They're not going to be that crass about it, but that's no joke. It just depends on what your politics are. That will tell us whether or not you are part of the power structure. But white men, you've got no out. And then get this. Okay, this one's a fun one. This is how this works. Anyone who is close to anything that can be defined as whiteness is what is called, and this is this brand new phrase, they're called adjacent white. Adjacent white. So they may not have white skin, but they may as well be white. They're just adjacent to white males. So in the last couple of years, it has been written seriously, not just in some op-ed piece, in some small newspaper, but serious pieces, academic works, academic books, making the argument that Asian Americans are all adjacent whites. So you eliminate an entire ethnicity and you throw them into adjacent whites. Now, why are they adjacent whites? Because statistically, they're actually more successful than whites in American culture. Make more money, get better jobs, higher levels of education, their families stay together longer. So the only thing we can do with them is to call them white. Does this sound like racism to anybody? It does to me. Conservative blacks. Okay, so if you are politically or socially conservative and you're African American, you are an adjacent white. Yes? That is a magnificent question. How is something so obviously contradictory not just an example of why this theory is purely incorrect? On one level, I don't know if there's a good answer to that question. On the other level, it's because we're beginning with power structures as opposed to everything else. So if we want to talk about power structures, and we're talking about white males and people who are like white males, and it's not even necessarily white males, it's who white males tend to vote for, it's politics, it's ideology. So if anybody else sort of falls in that category. So it is a complete rearranging of reality itself. And so we're going to get rid of the Jews and say that they're just white people killing each other in the Holocaust. But this is a phenomenal question. Why doesn't this just make it obvious that this is false? I'm going to get to some reactions to that very thought after our next example of this glorious reality. So hang on to that thought. This is why a candidate for the governor's chair in the state of California who is an African American could be called by the LA Times a white supremacist because he's adjacent white. Anybody who is heteronormative or anybody who believes that heterosexuality is what is normal or good for the human person, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what language you speak, what color your skin is, you are adjacent white. And the really big one right now is Jews. So this is hardcore anti-Semitism through this seemingly academic phrase of being adjacent white. Here are some of the absurdities, just some of the absurdities that come with this point of view. Past power structures, so going way back in the past power structures that have nothing to do with white Americans or white Europeans, but if there's obvious power structures in the past, the label of whiteness gets placed on those power structures. When no white person is involved 500 years ago in another part of the world, if there's a power structure, they're going to say it's whiteness, okay? So whiteness just becomes this hollow word that's used to say people we don't like or who vote differently than we do. It just becomes this hollow word that's used as a kind of curse word. It's an academic curse word in our culture right now. So whiteness becomes nothing more than a political curse word. And here's another one that we'll touch on a little bit with the next example. But this concept of whiteness, and as a power structure and all this garbage that comes with it, turns into, in the Christian world, in the evangelical world, a redefinition of doctrine as sociology. Here's what I mean by that. It is really common for progressive Christians, certain evangelical Christians, certain people who label themselves as Christian theologians, to, again, it's not write op-ed pieces or blog posts, but write academic books and academic articles saying things like the evangelical Christian belief in the sufficiency of Scripture or the inerrancy of Scripture, that we can trust everything that it says, or the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, or the uniqueness of Jesus. These kinds of core Christian doctrines that have been around since the Apostles' Creed almost 2,000 years ago, 1,700 years ago, they will argue in their books and their articles that every one of those doctrines is nothing but a cover for white men to put down women and blacks. It's just a cover for a power structure to keep blacks down here and to keep women down here. They're names that nobody would know. So there's a very popular book out right now. Maybe some of you have heard of it, Jesus and John Wayne, by a historian at Calvin Reformed Seminary. I mean, this is a hardcore Reformed seminary. She's a historian there, and she does this. Her entire argument in that book is that American evangelicalism is a smokescreen for patriarchy. So everything Christians believe and everything Christians do is whiteness. It's white male patriarchy. What we really want is John Wayne. We're not after the true Jesus. And of course, the true Jesus is social justice. It's a different Jesus altogether. Yes, ma'am. You're going to be trouble tonight, aren't you? I have the very same questions. She's wondering if these folks who say these things really know Jesus. When they talk about their Jesus, it's not the Jesus that we know in Scripture. It's just not. It's a construct. It's the liberal theology that comes out of the schools of German theology in the 1800s. I mean, it's that whole crowd. And what's so interesting to me is that these people are teaching at traditionally Reformed seminaries, and these Reformed seminaries don't do anything about it. And it goes on and on. Another popular book that was very popular in the middle of 2020, written by a Christian professor, her name is Jamar Tishby. By the way, her name is, can't remember her first name for Jesus and John Wayne, Dumez, D-U-M-E-Z. Kristen Kobes Dumez. Jesus and John Wayne. You guys didn't know it, but you worship John Wayne, not Jesus, and Kristen Kobes Dumez will tell you all about it. It was a huge kerfuffle on Twitter late last year when she was asked by another Reformed professor on Twitter publicly, because she's very public on Twitter, what her belief about homosexuality is. Do you believe homosexuality is a sin? She wouldn't answer him. She wrote this great big long essay in response, and the essay said, and I could have told you what this essay said before she wrote the essay. She goes, I'm in conversation with groups of people about these important things. And she teaches at a Reformed seminary. And if that's not making any sense to you, you've got evangelical Christians and you've got Reformed Christians. Think of them like gangs. If evangelical Christians carry pocket knives, Reformed Christians carry machine guns. They are hardcore serious about their theology. And so if one of those flagship Reformed seminaries cannot deal with this, flush it down the toilet and let it go. Did I see another hand? Yeah. Isn't that interesting how the New Testament is an example of whiteness? It is male white patriarchy when not a single one of those men who wrote the New Testament was white. They were Jew. But this point of view requires anti-Semitism. It requires it. Yes, that's okay. It's cold in here, so I'm getting my blood rolling. I'm going to start sweating here in a couple of minutes. It's going to get exciting. I hope we know where the AED is so that you can shock me back alive after I have my blood pressure heart attack here, right? So one of the absurdities with this point of view in the Christian world is the redefinition of doctrine and sociology. You don't really believe that. You only believe that so that you can tell blacks and women what to do. Okay, it's a joke. It's just an absolute joke, but they hold to this stuff seriously. And then the wrong non-whites are constantly accused of being white. It's a curse word. It's a political curse word. It's a social curse word now. So, it's not just one of our secular public intellectuals like Whoopi Goldberg who says stuff like this. This is entrenched in parts of the church right now. I'm going to show you one video and then about a minute of a second video. This is a presentation given by a theologian and sociologist. His name is Michael O. Emerson. You've got it there in your notes. He's interesting because he's written a handful of influential things as a woke progressive Christian. Nobody knows his name, but they know his books, and he's influential. In this clip, he's addressing a national church convention of the Evangelical Covenant Church. The Evangelical Covenant Church, if you look it up, has its roots in the Reformed Church, has its roots in the Puritan, the Dutch Reform movement, so everything on their website looks and sounds great. But this guy is addressing this crowd of people, and this is what he has to say. And I want to make sure that you know that you are probably not a Christian, because you do not worship the right Jesus. So the bottom left-hand corner is just a little clip of him in the video. Then you've got one of his slides up there on the other side. So let's take a deep breath and listen to about 2 minutes of this.
We're arguing in this book that 2/3 of white practicing Christians are not following Christianity. They're following a different religion, and we're calling it the religion of whiteness. Okay? Thank you. You don't have to clap. So I want to outline what is this thing we're calling the religion of whiteness. And actually, just to give you a heads up, we came up with a theory, then we designed all the tests I showed you to see if the theory held. Okay, so we didn't actually work in the order I just presented it, but it makes it easier to present. Quickly, what is whiteness? What do we mean by that? It can mean lots of things. You hear it used all the time. We're meaning that it's just white people and anybody else, any other hues, that kind of support the dominance of white people. It's the imagined right that those who are designated as racially white are the norm. They're the standard. Everything else is measured against that. And it's the imagined right that what is white, I mean, it's not usually said white, it's what is standard, the norm, is better than any other way. Whether that's in theology or economics or culturally, morally, and so on. It's important because it's that power, this power that comes from whiteness, that is being worshipped instead of Christ. It's centuries upon centuries of this that is the felt need to defend it and to celebrate it and to worship it.
It would literally explode. I watched several clips from this thing, and my skin crawls every single time. So 2/3, according to his research, 2/3 of white American Christians do not worship the Jesus of Christianity. They worship whiteness. And then you got to love this methodology. You got to love this methodology because this is how 18-year-olds do it. This is not how professionals do it. So we came up with a theory, then we asked a bunch of questions that supported our theory, and whammo, we're right. It's an absolute joke. So this slide deck that he has, he's got a list of the questions that they ask people, and they are so stinking loaded. It is a joke. One of the questions they ask that he mentions in one of these slides is, do you believe the Bible to be true and Jesus to be the one way to heaven? If you answer yes to that, you are worshiping the religion of whiteness. You are not worshiping the religion of Christianity and of the true Jesus. And did you notice that, he says 2/3 of American Christians are not Christian. They don't worship Jesus of the Bible. And what does that crowd of people do? The Evangelical Covenant Church is a church that is based in the northern Midwest. I think it's either in Minnesota or in Illinois, which means what? That crowd was full of white people. So you've got a crowd of people who are just lemmings, just jumping right off the cliff with this guy. They're enlightened, and you and I are all going to this place that they believe does not exist. By the way, belief in hell is also an example of your whiteness power structure. It's not a doctrine, it's an example of your whiteness power structure. There's just so much in here that just... But notice this as well. He is no different than Whoopi Goldberg. White people, along with people who are like them but have different skin color. And notice how carefully he says it. Along with their supporters with other hues of skin. And support white dominance. So again, you're not Christian. You're this religion of white. By the way, friends, I'm seeing all of the appropriate responses on your faces. And one of the responses is essentially what's been expressed a couple of times is, how in the world, what in the world is this? I'll tell you fundamentally what this is. This is academic gobbledygook. This is meaningless garbage. And this is the kind of stuff that within a handful of years is literally going to be thrown away, because this is garbage. The language he's using, the vocabulary he's using, the study that he has done. By the way, the book that he is writing is in conjunction with one of the nation's leading demographers at Notre Dame. His name is Christian Smith. So they consider this serious. The book that they're writing right now will be on the free bin at the used bookstore 5 years from now. This is absolute garbage. There's nothing to this. I can tell you that because this happened 25 years ago. An entire another swath of progressive Christians decided the church was emergent and had to become postmodern. They had their own special phrasing of all this academic gobbledygook and how meta-narratives are just the oppressive power of white people and missionaries, and how truth is discovered through community and mutual narrative and story, and the church has changed. And again, you don't remember their names or their books because it was all garbage. This is all going away, but it's going to wreak its havoc before it does that. Well, he's got a little bit more to say, and we'll watch just a little bit of this next one, talking about religion, and then a little bit more of his research methodology.
Okay, so I won't go into this definition of religion. This is what sociologists use. It's one of them anyway. But what I want to point out is that all religions have what we call totems. So that's what's being worshipped, but it's the representation of what's being worshipped. Those are called totems. All religions have beliefs, they have practices, and then they have a way that they organize, pass on the faith, keep the faith going, teach the faith. So I just want to look at that for the religion of whiteness. The totems are a white Jesus and the merging of the cross and the flag in the United States. I'll give some examples here, but it's extremely important that Jesus is white. It's not a just chance thing. Jesus has to be white in this religion. I typed into Google Jesus, and these are the things that come up. I typed in...
All right, he spends the next couple of minutes talking about what he typed into Google and the pictures that he got back. Brilliant research. Oh. He probably added Wikipedia as his second reference there. For people to publish this kind of stuff and be taken seriously, you have to reduce the standards of scholarly work to the very bottom of the barrel. I mean, you have to scrape the bottom and say, a Google word search. I typed a word into Google, and that's what proves this. It's just, again, just stunning garbage. But you have to have a white Jesus. I have never known a Christian who has to have a white Jesus. I've never known that person. Maybe some of you might have known one or two of them. We might be able to cobble together half a dozen of them, but you and I as Christians don't have to, right? He's making stuff up. He's imposing it upon you, and he's getting a crowd of white people to applaud him for it, all right? So this religion of whiteness, it's being used to undermine the Christian faith. Yeah? One of the axioms of socialism, this is absolutely right, is to redefine. Redefining Christianity, redefining who Jesus is, redefining what faith is, redefining what a church is, redefining what religion is, and telling all of us, I'm sorry. I love this. He tells a room full of white people that 2/3 of American Christians are not Christians. They applaud because what are they thinking? We're real Christians. They're not. So it immediately creates this tribalism. It immediately creates this division between them and you. And what's the division? We're Christians, you're not, and a division in all the wrong kinds of ways. Right? So this elitism that comes along with it, this pretentiousness that comes along with it, the changing of language. We keep going through some of this kind of stuff, because this is important for us to see, and we see that it's inside of a church, it's inside of denominations, it's inside of congregations. It's just out there in the air that we breathe, the TV shows that maybe none of us watch, but lots of our neighbors watch, and on and on and on it goes. So this thing is just out there in the air, and we need to learn how to filter it. And we also need to realize, and we're going to see this in our study of Zechariah tonight, this portion of Zechariah, if we get around to this particular portion, we've got to remember this is spiritual warfare. This is the enemy at work trying to pull the church apart, trying to pull people away from following Jesus Christ. This is spiritual warfare. And they're just, from my perspective, as a pastor of my age, having done this for so long, there are just way too many Christians falling for it. And they're falling for it in weird ways. Ways that just don't make sense to me. It's so easy because it is the dominant point of view in the air. It's so easy to listen to this stuff and just slide right along with it. It is so easy to do that. Which is why, like we've been talking about off and on for the last few weeks on Sunday mornings, church, it's going to take courage and faithful endurance in interesting ways. Just simply holding to truth is truth, doctrine is doctrine, recognizing where we are wrong or have been wrong, but not taking those moments to say everything I believe is wrong, right? So the misuse of a doctrine has nothing to do with the truth or falsehood of that doctrine. They are two different things altogether. So it's going to require courage to hang on to the truth and to do it well, while all of this just rages around the church in so many ways.